All right, good morning. I'm Dr. Laura Click.
Good morning.
I teach employment and life skills classes for recently released felony offenders. My students tell me how critical the chance of parole was in motivating them to change the behaviors that sent them to prison. Motivation for good behavior directly impacts the safety of correctional officers and staff. Removing incentives for reform puts the staff, as well as the inmates, at greater risk. Our prison's rising violence, staffing shortages, and our massive growing legal costs are all predictable consequences from reducing the primary incentive for rehabilitation. Parole provides people a reason to pursue education, avoid conflict, and prepare to reenter society. It also supports plea agreements, easing the burden on our courts. Above all, the hope of release for prisoners is the strongest driver of change we have. The recent proposal to double the parole set-off period from 5 to 10 years based only on the original sentence would be a blow to that incentive. The parole board already uses the maximum set-off more than any other, even for those working unsupervised in our communities already at work release. Just last month, 21 at work release were denied parole, and all 21 received a maximum set-off. Since 5 years is common even for those lowest risk individuals, 10 years would become the new standard. When I was hired to teach medicine at a top university, it wasn't based on who I was 25 years ago as a new graduate. It was based on who I am now. We should apply the same principle to parole. A judge and jury already gave them a sentence that included that parole eligibility. A longer set-off based only on someone's distant past undermines the entire goal of rehabilitation. Extending set-offs based on recent behavior would make more sense, as opposed to the man in his 50s who's not had a disciplinary in 25 years and is safely serving children food through work release. Making that man wait 10 more years for his next parole review, that's not corrections, that's warehousing. I realize how painful these hearings are for victims. I've been a victim myself. But stretching parole reviews to 10 years doesn't spare families from their pain, it silences them for a full decade. Extending set-offs to 10 years will undercut rehabilitation, increase risk for prison staff, raise costs for taxpayers, and make plea deals harder to reach. Even 5 years is an incredibly long time. I urge you not to extend parole set-offs based on something that happened 25, 35, or 45 years ago. Thank you for your time. I would be pleased to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Click.
No questions.
All right. The next speaker is Dr. Bobby White, and the speaker after Dr. White is Carla Crowder. I think I saw Carla. So, all right, Dr. White.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the committee, and good morning to those that are present. My name is Robert White. Senator called me Bobby. That's my nickname. I have two ministries in the system, one at Kilby, the other at Easterling, and we're working on getting the one back at Staten. And I represent a consortium of pastors that really want to help the committee in its task. And in our research and in our discussions, we've come up with an acronym that we think will hopefully emphasize to you what we think is important, and it's called SIDE, S-I-D-E, and it stands for Structure, Incentive, Discipline, and Education. Those four areas are critical in continuing to build a healthy environment for those who are incarcerated. And because I spent an awful lot of time with them in my ministry, and I have church members that are formerly incarcerated persons, they all basically say that if you give them incentive, the incentive is going to promote good behavior. And part of being a part of my ministries is the fact that you can't have any slip-ups, you can't have any hiccups, you have to walk the line. And for the most part, they do. And so I invite you all to come with me sometimes when I go, to see what goes on and to talk with some of the inmates themselves, because the more opportunities you give them, the stronger the environment, the structured environment, the more I think attentive that they're going to be. I would suggest that more dorms be structured and have programs, because that incentivizes good behavior. And today, as I close, I'm standing on behalf of one of my church members who's 6 years old, and her father was stabbed 25 times one day before he was supposed to be released, and he died. And she came in my office last Wednesday, and she just wanted to talk about how she felt. And I was very honored by that. I was very humbled by that. And I told her I was going to talk to some people that can help to try to stop that from happening. And so that's why I'm here. I'm standing on behalf of her and on behalf of those people who really want to see a change and have a lot of confidence in this committee that it can help make that change. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for bringing that story. And I want to take you up on that offer.
Okay.
So we, if possible, we can exchange information. So, because I would like to go when you go.
Sure, absolutely. Love to have you. Okay.
Quick question, your acronym, the E stands for?
Education.
Education. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
And let me know when y'all plan to go. I would like to go as well.
Okay.
So, just as a personal point of privilege, I met Bobby in the early 90s, I think it was, 92, somewhere in there, at a Promise Keepers event in Atlanta. And we've been friends for a long time. So, okay, Miss Carla Crowder. And then after Carla will be Tim Mathis. Ms. Crowder.
Good morning. Thank you for your time and attention this morning. And I want to build upon what Dr. White was sharing. As you know, Appleseed's not shy about lifting up the problems in the prison system, but today we're going to talk about something different. We offer a roadmap for safer prisons. I hope you've all received a copy of our report about positive programs that have transformed the culture in 5 prison systems across the country. First example is California, because the results there are so profound. But just flip that page if you don't love California, and it'll take you right to South Carolina. The point of this research is to open your eyes about what is possible in that 4,000-bed prison that we, the people of Alabama, are spending $1.2 billion on. So I'll start with South Carolina. They had problems like ours. In 2018, there was a riot where 7 incarcerated men died. Then a program called Restoring Promise started there. This program creates mentorship-based housing units. Older prisoners mentor younger prisoners. Safety and accountability are the goals. Housing units are designed in partnership with incarcerated people, and it works. Participants there are 73% less likely to receive violent charges in prison and 83% less likely to stay in solitary confinement. All of those are huge issues across our system. Across the country, prison systems that have dealt with overwhelming crowding and violence and dysfunction have found that creating more opportunities for the incarcerated people to lead is what makes prisons safer, and safer for officers as well. The results from California's GRIP program are astounding. It saved California taxpayers $600 million. The recidivism rate of graduates is about 2%. And there are 869 people who have been released after going through that incredible program in California. And they are now safely in the community, not reoffending. We need more programs like that here. Alabama has some fantastic educational programs. We have faith-based programs. But if we're going to house 4,000 people in a prison complex, we need more of these programs where incarcerated people lead and mentor. So we share some other examples from Missouri, from Oregon, from Maine. Prison officials in other states, legislators in other states visit these examples, these safer prisons, and take lessons learned back to their states. This committee should consider a visit, and Appleseed can help make that happen. So let's make a plan before this huge new prison opens so we are not shoving the old problems into shiny new buildings. Let's make a plan to visit some of these programs. It's great that y'all are finally visiting Alabama prisons, but let's do more. Is my time out?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you. I would say I personally, and I know others on this committee, have visited our prisons for quite a while, not just recently.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative.
We've had a number of conversations about many elements of our system. I would first and foremost, I would love to take advantage of the opportunity, and I think others to go and kind of see how some of these programs work. But there's also been a really just an exhaustive conversation recently about parole things, guidelines, and so forth, and we've talked about this. And I just kind of wanted to get you on record on the new guidelines, because we had talked about these things before. And do you have anything briefly, because obviously we're kind of pressed for time, but briefly, some criticism or some advice or whatever on our new guidelines?
So my understanding is the new
Proposed
guidelines are not final. They still have to go through legislative council. One thing I would like to lift up, and thank you for that opportunity, there is a important piece of the guidelines that look at reentry planning, people's home plan, and people's job plan, which is, of course, really important. So there's a part of the guidelines, a section, that looks at whether people who come up for parole have a home plan and a job. And what it requires is for people who are incarcerated to find housing and to find a job from inside the prisons. It's extremely difficult. It can happen for people on work release, but most of these these employers, they have portals to apply. There are not transitional living houses all across the state. It's so hard to find housing. And what's particularly interesting about penalizing people who don't find housing and jobs from inside the prisons is that the statewide reentry task force specifically cited a lack of services in the prisons to connect people with employment and housing in their recently released report. They basically say, DOC doesn't have staff, they don't do this for folks, they don't have the capacity. So our incarcerated folks are on their own to find jobs and housing, or they get penalized in their parole guideline score. That is something that could be easily remedied in these guidelines. For those of them that are lucky enough to have housing and a job, let's give them a subtraction from their score like was done with the educational programs. Let's say, -2 if you found jobs and housing instead of +2 if you haven't been able to navigate that on your own. Lots of other things about the parole guidelines, but hopefully they will get some attention in legislative council. I'd love to talk more with anyone about the issues with the guidelines.
Okay. Did you submit any, can you put that in writing for us?
Yes. In fact, I will forward our recommendations. There was a public comment period,
Okay.
and I think the parole board considered those. So I'll share all of our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Mathis is next. And then after Mr. Mathis is Ian Wade. Is Ian Wade here? Last call for Ian Wade. Next will be Rachel Elledge. Is Rachel Elledge here? Okay. Okay, Mr. Mathis.
Well, first, let me thank y'all for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. As most of you know, the first time I spoke here was right after my son Chase was killed at Elmore facility on June the 4th. And the pain of his loss has just devastated me for the last year. It's just unbearable to hardly deal with it. And I'm compelled to tell you that I research this pretty well, and I try to keep up with everything, but the measures taken to prevent the murders and assaults in these prisons is just wholly inadequate. It's just amounts to almost nothing being done. The scale of drug smuggling is shocking. Some of the things I'm about to speak are from their own statistical report. They confiscated over 76 pounds of illicit drugs. 25 grams of that was fentanyl. That's enough to kill 12,000 people with an overdose amount. They took over 1,068 edged and pointed weapons, and also included 6 firearms. Now, I understand people get things smuggled in from outside. They have drones, they have this, they have that, but there's a lot of this that's not getting in there that way. And the crisis in there it demands more urgent action than what we're doing. And I understand y'all's position that you can only do what you can do and bring it up when you're in session. But there needs to be more transparency for this. The general public has no idea what goes on inside these prisons. They think these people live 2 people to a cell, there's a toilet and a bed. They don't understand they're herded like cattle into a dorm that's built to hold 70 people, and there's 155, 200 people in there. The rapes, the murders. I just don't feel that the director, Mr. Ham, and the ADOC is doing anywhere near enough to fulfill their job duties. And then we're going to spend $1.5 billion on a new prison that we don't even know they're going to be able to staff, much less run it appropriately. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I can't believe our governor had the gall to allow them to name that prison after her. But there's got to be some change enacted. There's too many people dying. A lot of these people out here still have loved ones in there. Mine's gone. There's nothing I can do for him, as much as I try and as much as I pray over it and cry over it. But as I told you before, I'm mad. I'm not going to become unmad till something's done about this. And y'all will continue to see me. You're going to see me in the news. You're going to see me here every time the door opens. And I appreciate everything you've done. I spoke with Mr. Chambliss. I spoke with Mr. England. And I know y'all are doing everything right now that you can, and we appreciate it. I just want you to continue or do more. Push them harder. Just let's get something done, because there's a lot of these people in here. There were 88 deaths the first 3 months of this year. That's almost a person a day. And this came off of the state's website. Regardless of how they died, a lot of them are listed as drug overdoses. But if the dope wasn't in there, they wouldn't overdose on it. And you don't expect your loved one that has a drug habit to go into a prison facility and have easier access to that than you would if you put a drunk in a liquor store and locked him up. And that's what it amounts to, basically. There's no way you can get clean or nothing, and the conditions they live in. I'll be honest with you, if I had to live in some of what my son did, I'd probably be a dope addict too when I came out. And that's just the reality of it. But something's got to change, gentlemen. I beg you to do it. And I do appreciate you letting us speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mathis.
Thank you.
Okay, Miss Elledge, and then after Miss Elledge will be Miss Durham. Miss Durham. The first name is, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Kia Durham. Last call for Miss Durham. Okay, this next speaker will be Colleen Howell. Miss Howell, okay. Thank you. Miss Elledge.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rachel Elledge, and I was actually sentenced to the Alabama Department of Corrections in 2021. I was taken out of an environment that was fueled by violence, drugs, all kinds of crazy things that were led by criminals and thugs. And I was sentenced to another environment that was just as violent, drug use was rampant, but this time it was run by the Alabama Department of Corrections. Once I arrived there, because my sentence was so short, my sentence was a 6-year sentence, I didn't qualify for any of the programs that Tutwiler offered, which is the substance abuse program, the crime bill. I didn't qualify for those things. Because I would be released before I would be up on the waiting list, which is over a year. The waiting list for these women is over a year to get into these programs. And for ones that are going down on minor drug charges and their sentences aren't that long, they're being turned right back onto the streets without any kind of help. By the grace of God, when I went up for parole, I had applied to the Lovelady Center in Birmingham to transition back out into society, because while I was in prison, it was just like being on the street, except for the dealers and the traffickers were actually corrections officers. And so, like I said, by the grace of God, I was allowed to go to the Lovelady Center and transition from that program into being a law-abiding citizen. At one point, while I was in Tutwiler, I had a corrections officer tell me, Rachel, I just put 2 of my girls through college off what I make off y'all. not by what the state pays me, but what we make off the drug use that goes on in these prisons. That's an insane amount. These women are stabbing each other. They're hitting each other in the face with bricks over a $12 drug debt that wouldn't even exist if they weren't bringing it in, if our corrections officers were not bringing it in. And here I was just happy that I had feminine products and enough toilet paper to last me for a 2-day weekend. And he's sending both his girls through college with what he was making off inmates. There's got to be reform. There's got to be change. There's got to be accountability. Even though we were behind that fence, we're still human beings. We have a drug problem, most of us, and I speak for myself. Yes, I was an addict. It was choices that I made in my addiction. But I never was able to receive any kind of help. It was either get on a bus ticket and go back to the same environment that you got sick in to begin with, and we'll see you back probably in 6-12 months. We've got to change. We've got to set some programs that allow these ladies to transition and realize that there's another way to live besides with the life that they're coming out of. Thank you. Any
Thank
questions?
you so much for being here, Representative England.
First, thank you for sharing that. I know that was difficult, but I had a couple of questions for you. Did you EOS or did you get paroled?
I paroled because my home plan was the Love Lady Center.
Okay, all right. So you left the facility, paroled into a sort of a transition home, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Obviously had a positive effect.
Yes.
And I also want to shine a light on something else too. I know that we're building a new men's facility, but the oldest facility in the state of Alabama is Tutwiler. It's almost 100 years old. If it's not, probably close to it.
Yes, sir.
Could you briefly describe the conditions in Tutwiler?
The conditions are horrible. One, there's no air conditioning. And I understand that when you go to prison, it's not supposed to be an easy cakewalk and like you're staying in a hotel, but the temperatures inside that prison, which is set up like chicken coop houses, gets over 110 degrees. We don't always have fans in there. The bathrooms, the showers are absolutely atrocious. The food, I mean, it's a 100-something-year-old building, so it's terrible. It's terrible.
So I want you to, because I don't want people to forget the fact that while there are plans to build one new men's facility and another to follow, the oldest, the worst is where we house women. There's only have one women's facility in the state, and that's Tutwiler.
Absolutely.
And I just think it sends a horrible message that we're allowing women to live in squalor in a hellhole while we focus on, building another facility for men.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also, I also want to shine a light on the other issue that you identified, the fact that we do, as a state, have programs that for years were underutilized because of a extremely low parole rate, and not necessarily based on what the person did or didn't do as they go before the parole board, but things that were somewhat out of their control now because they've been incarcerated for so long. So I think an effective use of our system would be to properly assess someone to determine if they're a threat or not, and then to utilize all the things that we've created with our own state tax dollars to help that transition by giving parole so people who don't need to be there can get out, which ultimately also makes space for people who need to be there. So again, I thank you again for coming and telling your story. Again, I know it was difficult, but it's one of those stories that we need to hear, that there are success stories in your, while your story is amazing, there are other people who are incarcerated that need the same opportunity.
Absolutely.
And not just for the sake of forgiveness or redemption, but also for what makes sense fiscally, because we can't continue to over-incarcerate people and expect to be able to fund new buildings and also be able to take care of those folks who are there.
Absolutely, and our recidivism rate is so high because we're not giving them any programs or any ways to get out of that life. And if we're not offering those programs like the Love Lady or what have you, they're going to continue in that cycle because they know no other way to live or survive.
And the last point I'll make is I'm a firm believer that the environment that someone lives in directly affects how much hope they have for their future.
Absolutely.
So if someone lives in hell, in squalor, constant threat to life and safety, or surrounded by drugs, we substantially increase the likelihood that that person will not survive that environment, and if they do, will likely reoffend and go back. So it's incumbent upon us to not only create a better environment, but to also put people in those positions that aren't participating in trafficking drugs. So again, thank you for coming and telling your story.
Senator Roberts.
Rachel, Dan Roberts. I've been involved with Love Lady for 15, 20 years, ever since Miss Brenda had the vision to go and make that facility happen. It's an old hospital that was in mothballs, and Miss Brenda came in a ragtag way and put together a program that's now one ministering to women and children.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate your pointing that out because that's something we've worked very diligently on for an extended period of time. So thank you very much, and best of success to you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elledge. Thank you for being here today.
Hey,
Oh,
Senator,
I'm sorry.
Just
Representative
curious,
Hill.
ma'am. I echoed Senator Roberts. I've worked with Love Lady ever since it got started. I sent people to Love Lady. I always found them to be an excellent facility. Are you still there?
Yes, sir.
And how long do you anticipate continuing there?
Well, I'm currently employed by the Love Lady Center. After I completed my program, about a year, I was hired on as their volunteer coordinator. So I have no plans on leaving the center anytime soon.
Okay.
And I would like to invite any of you guys that would like to come up and see the center and take a tour. I would love to do that so you guys can see the impact that it's having on these women, not just women, but children. Yeah.
No, it's a good program. And no, there is absolutely no question. Their success rate speaks, for itself. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next speaker is Colleen Howell, and then after Ms. Howell will be Amanda Russell. Is Amanda Russell here? Last call for Ms. Russell. Next speaker will be Jeremy Miller. It's Jeremy Miller, okay? Okay, Ms. Howell, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm here today as a mother who believes in second chances and a system that is supposed to support rehabilitation. My husband and I appeared before the parole board with my son's real accomplishments. He was actively participating in the crime bill class and was part of ADOC's newly implemented MOUD program. He had committed himself to recovery and a better path forward. But when we finished delivering my 2-minute speech, what we expected to be a conversation about his progress became a denial built on disbelief. The board accused my son of lying to us. They dismissed his enrollment in the crime bill class and denied that the existence of the MOUD program altogether, despite the fact that he was among the first to participate. No one took the time to verify what he had actually accomplished. They made a ruling based on misinformation and assumptions. We showed them internet search and witness proof that proved that there was, in fact, a MOUD program. They still denied him parole. It wasn't until they verified the information after we had already left the building and they called us back into the parole board that they verified that he was, in fact, in the MOUD program and that he was, in fact, in the crime bill class and would be graduating in about 2 to 3 weeks. So after discovering this, they reversed their decision and granted him parole, but on the condition that he would graduate the class which he was acting in, and we assured him that he would. That moment shook us, not because of the emotional toll, my husband was crying, but because it exposed something more troubling, a system that didn't do the work to see the full picture of who he had become, a system that almost shut the door to his redemption because no one cared or paused to ask any of the right questions or check if any of the facts in his folder was true and correct. Then release day came, where more breakdown followed. He was supposed to have an ankle monitor. He did not receive one. He was supposed to be sent home with medication from the MOUD program until he could get to see another doctor that could continue that. He did not get any of that. Until I refused to leave until they gave him some medication. They gave us 7 days worth. According to the MOUD program, they are supposed to be released with 30 days worth. Then, according to the doctor that he talked to at the prison, he would be mailed another 30 days within 14 days of parole. And on the 45th day, he would be mailed another 30 days. None of that happened. When RX Outreach, the program that's supposed to supply this, contacted Staten, no one would return their calls. We contacted the warden by email. He told us that they were only allowed to give us 7 days and that he needed to talk to the people in the RX Outreach. My son deserves better. Every person trying to rebuild their life in prison deserves better. There's breakdowns, people are not doing their jobs, and people are not listening or investigating fully before they pass judgment on his past and not what he has done for his future.
Ms. Howell and members, I did independently verify the first part of what your statement.
So you were the one they contacted to verify that he was in those programs?
No.
Okay.
I verified what you just said is accurate.
Okay.
The first part.
Yeah.
The second part I didn't know about
Right.
the release and all that. I just want
Yeah.
the committee to know that the first part of it is accurate.
Yes.
So are there questions from the committee or comments? Representative Ingram.
So the issues that you identified have become, they're not a bug, they've become part of a feature of our system as cases are being reviewed by the parole board.
Good.
And I'm hoping that in the future that we do get more transparency and we do have some more oversight.
Yeah.
But I do feel like in our most recent, I think one thing that she said about everything that he's done in order to be rehabilitated,
Right.
I think needs to be reflected in the guidelines.
It does.
And to that point, if there is an element of those guidelines that require the board to at least acknowledge those, you're less likely to have some of those mistakes.
Correct. There should be verification on the information in the reports that are sent to the parole board for the people coming up. And the entire parole board had no idea there was an MOUD program.
Right. And it also points out something else that I think is troubling for the system itself, and it's the lack of coordination between all the interested parties in the Department of Corrections
Correct.
and parties in parole.
Yes.
Because generally speaking, there should be a unified mission there where the Department of Corrections is correcting and the parole board recognizes those corrections and then makes a determination based upon whether or not that person is going to be safe to release or not, in coordination with the information that is given to them from the Department of Corrections.
Correct.
But what we see is a constant breakdown in that communication where all the work, all the investment that is made on the Department of Corrections side to rehabilitate someone is just almost ignored in less than 5 minutes in front of the parole board.
Correct.
But one of the things that I do know that's going to happen, and I think we've seen it in the newspapers, that, and I think it will help, is that those who are parole board applicants will be given an opportunity to actually directly address the board through at least a
That's
recorded
awesome.
statement. And again, I know that it's how this has been painted, and is that it's just me or others talking about trying to get as many people out as possible, which is furthest from the truth. What it is trying to create a fair system that gives both sides the opportunity to present information so the board can make a well-informed decision about denial or not.
Right.
And that's the whole point.
If we had not had someone with us to bring up on the internet search the MOUD program and that it had started at Staten, I don't really think that the board would have verified after we left. She pulled it up and showed it to them on her phone, and they still denied that the program even existed.
So again, that's a fundamental failure that just shouldn't happen, especially.
I would like to know how many should have been paroled that have been denied wrongfully. It's got to be checked into. Also, the program was to release him with medication. After I pitched a fit, they gave him 7 days. He was supposed to get at least 30. I'd like to know where the rest of that medication went, because according to RX Outreach, when we contacted them, they said that Staten was wrong. He should have had 30 days.
Right.
And they couldn't even get a prescription from the medical department in Staten sent to them so that they could fill it for my son. So we had to do it all outside of the prison system, which costs a lot of money.
And I'll wrap up, but I know that, and I don't want to get too involved in his personal.
Yeah.
But if my assumption is correct, is he taking some sort of?
It's Suboxone.
Right. So
It is an opioid, but it's a different kind. It blocks all cravings of drugs.
Right.
And if he had not gotten in that program that had started there, he could have been dead, because he was an addict. He went in as an addict. And like the ones before said, there is more drugs in prison than he could have gotten his hands on outside.
Well, we are, as the legislature, we are keenly aware of the fact that there are significant gaps between the transition from getting out of prison and what's necessary to make that transition successful, including mental health, including drug treatment, including dual diagnosis.
Right.
When we could have another committee hearing specifically talking about the failures in our mental health system,
Right.
and how, it also contributes to recidivism.
Yes.
But ultimately, though, I hope going forward that the opportunity that people who apply for parole have available to them to address the board,
Right.
reduce some of those mistakes,
Yes.
those errors, and then also create a more informed process so it's more fair for everybody involved.
Just another thing. Only so many people can go into the MOUD program, and only so many people can go into the crime build program at a time. There's a long wait list. And if my son hadn't been able to get in any one of those, he would have never gotten any help. There needs to be more of them, not just one crime build program. There should be 2 or 3 classes going on. There are so many people waiting to get in and get the help, and they can't get it.
Thank you, Ms. Howell.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next speaker is Jeremy Miller, and then following Mr. Miller will be Gwendolyn Dunlap. Is Gwendolyn Dunlap here? Last call for Gwendolyn Dunlap. Tanya Clark. Is there a Tanya Clark here? Last call for Tanya Clark. I'm not sure I'll say this name correctly, but Dakari Lariat. Okay. You'll be next, sir. Okay, Mr. Miller.
All right, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Jeremy Miller. I'm the Senior Prison Ministry Manager for Prison Fellowship. Prison Fellowship is the nation's largest Christian nonprofit equipping the church to serve currently and formerly incarcerated people and their families to advocate for justice and human dignity. Established on the belief that all people are created in God's image and that no life is beyond his reach, Prison Fellowship takes a responsible approach to those affected by incarceration. We were founded in 1976 by the late Chuck Colson, who served time for a Watergate scandal after he worked with Richard Nixon in the White House, served time for a Watergate scandal. When Prison Fellowship was founded, I believe this is the problem that exists. There were 440,000 men and women that in 1976 that were behind bars in the United States. Today, there are nearly 1.8 million. That's more than a 300% increase. Meanwhile, almost 450,000 people are released from correctional facilities every year, and 2/3 of them are rearrested within 3 years. The annual cost of to incarcerate and reincarcerate this many people exceeds $80 billion nationwide. Beyond the price tag, soaring levels of incarceration and recidivism also take a terrible toll on our communities and our families. We believe the cycle of crime and incarceration produces broken relationships, victimization, and instability in our communities. So, we also say that individuals and communities aren't static. We believe that whether solo or in groups, people are dynamically shaped and molded through productive or destructive influences and interactions. Prisons are no different. The brokenness that lands men and women in prison left unaddressed perpetuates a cycle of destructive thinking behaviors that impacts individuals and communities both inside and outside of prisons. But thankfully, I've been going into prisons here in Alabama since 2011, and I've seen that we have now more programs in prison than we had back in 2011 when I started going into prisons. So I want to thank Commissioner Ham and Deputy Commissioner Williams for that. One of the programs that is here in Alabama inside of correctional facilities is our Prison Fellowship Academy. The Prison Fellowship Academy is founded on the Christian belief of human dignity and redemption. The Prison Fellowship Academy seeks to disrupt this cycle using targeted curriculum, compassionate coaches, and restorative community. Academy participants embark in a year-long journey to develop and practice the biblically based values of good citizenship, community affirmation, productivity, responsibility, restoration, and integrity. As they adopt and apply these Christian concepts of community and personal responsibility, they replace criminal thinking and behaviors with renewed life principles and purpose. The result is flourishing and peaceful communities where participants overcome the life-controlling issues that led to their incarceration. Academy graduates complete that program as change agents prepared to take their places as productive and positive contributors to their communities inside and outside of prison. One of recent studies showed that in Texas, and we have these academies across the nation, the Prison Fellowship Academy in Texas yielded a 53.8% reduction in recidivism. And so I want to thank the Department of Corrections for programs inside of prison and encourage to do more of that. I believe structured programs in prison is one way to bring down the recidivism and is one way to equip men and women with the tools that they need to be successful on the outside. And so I would agree with several of the other speakers that spoke earlier that programs is definitely something that I think the department should continue to look at as in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any comments? Senator Roberts.
Mm-hmm. I've been in and around Prison Fellowship for years and met Mr. Colson right after he got out and what an impact he's had. I think you're seeing that modeled, and you're more aware than I, but a ministry called Jumpstart. You're seeing Church of the Highlands, you're seeing Briarwood Theological Seminary, you're seeing lots of other groups coming together. Is there any type of organization where that's being coordinated, communicated, where?
So Bibb Correctional Facility is a facility that is basically pretty much fully programmed. And I was actually just at Bibb yesterday. We have a dorm there, Jumpstart, which is now Unbound. They have a program there, Birmingham Theological Seminary. I think the department has encouraged programs to come in, and you see that at Bibb, and you see that at St. Clair and some of those other facilities. And where there has been programs, I believe that you see, I can't speak for the department, but I bet they could see a reduction in the crazy stuff that goes on in the inside. So we thank them for that.
So I think what I understood the question, is there an association?
There's not that I know of, no. We all collaborate together.
It might be a good thing if you all had an association so you don't duplicate and you make sure. Anyway, just a suggestion.
That's where I was trying to go with that.
Yeah.
Is I agree. I see the recidivism rates that they publish and talk about, and I'd be happy to help if there's a way I could help with that.
Absolutely.
Most grateful for the work that you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next is Mr. Lariat. Am I saying that properly?
Perfect. Thank
Okay,
you so
great.
much.
After Mr. Lariat will be Yolanda Williams. Yolanda Williams, okay. Mr. Lariat.
Good morning,
morning.
representatives and senators. Thank you so much for this opportunity and facilitating this discussion. My name is Dakari Lariat, and I am a business owner and community leader outside of Birmingham, and also a candidate for United States Senate. And I am here today as part of my 67 county listening tour to understand the concerns of all Alabamians, including those impacted by incarceration. And I'm also here as someone who is a survivor of police brutality and a failed criminal justice system. So just last year, while driving through the state of Michigan, I was falsely arrested by the Michigan State Police. I was tortured. My driver's license was confiscated for about 3 months. And after many months of fighting for the body and dash cam, realized that the troopers were even attempting to plant narcotics in my vehicle. So they wanted a total ruin.
Mr. Lariat, if you would, let's talk about the state of Alabama.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again for this opportunity. I am so concerned about bills like HB 202 and a situation in which superpowers are being granted to law enforcement and corrections officers at the expense of individuals. We simply can't function as a state or society in which certain populations are not being granted basic rights and human rights. And so that's why I'm here today, to listen and to learn and to come back with policy proposals that I think will create a more fair situation for all Alabamians, including those impacted by incarceration.
Thank you, Mr. Lariat.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Yolanda Williams, and after Ms. Williams, I think we will have time for Ms. Lawhorn. Is Ms. Lawhorn here? Okay. Ms. Williams.
Hi, my name is Yolanda Williams. I'm a 20-year veteran of the United States Army, and I'm here on behalf of my husband, who's incarcerated at one of the Alabama state prisons. My concern is the overcrowding and the safety in the prison population. My husband is in a dorm at GK Fountain Correctional Facility that houses 80 men, but in that dorm, there's a total of 150 men with 7 to 9 fans. If those were dogs, we would be calling the police. People would be arrested for cruel and inhumane. Those conditions are inhabitable. My husband is also a maintenance worker at GK Fountain Correctional Facility. And some of the things he's discussed with me over the phone, as far as sewage, showers, and things like that, it's cruel. He has to go under those prisons to work on those pipes. They're corroded. And he states if you go in, or a gentleman goes in to use the restroom, and he's under there working on the pipes, you can see the feces flowing through the pipes. When he goes in to turn the shower on, he has to wait 10 to 15 minutes to get a shower, so feces is not coming through the shower. That's not right. I mean, I know the prison is not supposed to be a Hilton. I know the prison is not supposed to be where we're in a state house, but the prison is supposed to be cohabitable. Those are incohabitable environments. They go in to chow. He sat down the other day to have a meal, and a rat ran across the table. And as he began to scoop out his mashed potatoes, there are dead bugs in his mashed potatoes. And I understand that we have tax dollars that are going into these systems. As a veteran, some of those are my tax dollars. And I think the conditions could be way far better than what they are. No, we can't make it A1 hotel. We can't. They're there for crimes. But my husband is human. My husband is human. Everybody's loved one in those prisons are human. You got overcrowding. He walks down the hall. You got people sleeping on concrete floors with no mattresses, no bedding, no covers. What are we doing to these people? But we can go out and rescue 100 dogs and place them in a building has air conditioning. These buildings have no air conditioning. They have limited yard time because some days the guards are not feeling up to letting them out on the yard. Can you imagine the heat in those concrete buildings where these 80 to 150 men are housed, sleeping on the floor, barely probably getting clean drinking water? Who knows what they're ingesting with all of the things that are flowing through those pipes? And it's really concerning. What are we doing as taxpayers other than trying to build a mega prison, which hasn't, I don't even know the status of it at this point. And we're constantly flowing in an extra 100 to 150 people into these systems every day. The county jails are overfilled. It's ridiculous. And we as taxpayers, that we complain about our tax dollars, feeding these human beings, housing these human beings, we've got to do better. We have really got to do better. My question is, would you put your loved ones in that condition and expect them to live that way or forget about them? I'm not gonna forget about my husband. If I have to come up here every day, call every day, I call GK Fountain, I know probably 10 to 15 times a day because he's complaining about the excessive heat. That is crazy. Outside it's 110 degrees. Inside of that building, it might be 120. We have got to do better. We are killing people slowly, and then the healthcare system in there is probably worse than what they're living in. They have to put in a healthcare slip just to get someone up to the front to be seen about if they pass out, but it's due to the heat. We've got to do better. They get ice maybe once or twice a day. What is that for a human being when we could treat a dog better than a human being? That's not right. And we all come in here, some of us might be Christians, some of us might be another religion. But if we are Christians and we are faith-based, we should not look over the people that are incarcerated. They are human beings as well. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Thank you for being here today. Next is Ms. Lawhorn.
Yes.
And following Ms. Lawhorn, Devonna Carroll. Is Devonna Carroll here? Last call for Devonna Carroll. Go ahead, Ms. Lawhorn.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My son was incarcerated this year, and he was appointed to the crime bill program by the judge. When he got to the facility, they had no idea that he was supposed to be in the crime bill program, so I called and called to make sure that they had him in the class in January. Due to a lack of administration, the crime bill program didn't go as planned. Maybe March and April, there was no one there to teach the classes. So they were basically in the crime bill dorm just waiting for someone to teach the classes. In May, they finally got some more administrators to help with the class. There was a lack of correctional officers. So finally, when they got a lot of people there to teach the crime bill program, he got in an incident with some more inmates. So therefore, his crime bill was snatched from him. He had 30 days left to complete the crime bill program. So the crime bill program was snatched from him. He was put into solitary confinement for 75 days, no phone call or anything. So after the investigation was done for the incident, everybody in the incident was charged with the crime, assaulting another inmate. They were fighting. So they reclassed my son from a minimum out to a max prison because no one would snitch. And as a rule in the prison, if you talk, you are labeled a snitch. And therefore, when you're in there, you constantly have to look behind your back, making sure no one is going to come and stab you for talking. So how do you address that issue with the inmates in the prison if they want to say something, but they can't because they're afraid that it'll get back to the other inmates, and something will happen to them. And I'm sorry, but what I've learned since my son been in prison, inmates can get your information. They know who you are. They can get to you by any means necessary, regardless if it's correctional officers or not.
Thank you, Ms. Lawhorn. Are there any comments or questions for Ms. Lawhorn? Thank you, Ms. Lawhorn, for being here today and sharing your testimony with us. Okay. The only thing I would like to address is the status of the prison. I think someone mentioned that, not knowing what that is. It's my understanding that it's still on schedule to be completed by the end of next year, and then staffed or furnished, staffed, and all, and occupied the following year. If anybody has any information different than that, please let me know. So, okay, with that, we once again appreciate everybody being here today. I think you can see since our first public hearing, we are listening. We do hear. We are trying to make things better. Some progress has been made. We don't think we're finished, but we'll continue to take your testimony and make sure that we move in a direction that we think is positive for our state. With that, are there any comments from any members of the committee? Representative England.
Just to echo your sentiment as far as progress is concerned, based upon the testimony that's been given to us over the last 3 or 4 years, as a result of the stories and some of the other things that we've heard here, legislation has been sponsored and passed to create more transparency and accountability with the Department of Corrections and Pardons and Parole. As Senator Chambliss mentioned, we still have a lot of work to do, but for the first time, I believe that those who have incarcerated loved ones have somebody they can contact and a form they can fill out to start the process of having their issues addressed. And that's a direct result of the things we heard here and Senator Chambliss's effort sponsoring legislation to create an office specifically for that. Also, many of the things that were discussed in these meetings led to changes in our parole system. It led to changes with personnel in the Department of Corrections, and direct result of some of the things that we heard here. So just want to continue to stress that that your involvement in this process has had a substantial impact on what we've done here, and it will continue to do so. And also, as a legislator, just want to remind the public that our responsibility is to govern the system itself, to make it as effective and efficient, and to run as best as possible, which means that all sides have to be considered, which means that, you know, as far as us discussing those that are incarcerated, doesn't mean that we are ignoring the fact that there are victims involved in these cases as well. And part of the process for us to assess the system and your concept of justice is to make sure that there aren't more victims. How do you do that? Well, you create a system of corrections that means it's less likely for people who make mistakes to reoffend. We owe it to victims to make sure that they're notified, that their rights are respected, and the person who committed the crime is punished appropriately. But we also owe it to you who have family members who are incarcerated, that when we take custody of them, that there's a certain basic level of care that is due to them, just not because of any other reason, but they're human. So as legislators who are trying to govern the system and balance all sides, it means that we may not be excited about the fact that there may be a low parole rate, or we may not be excited about the fact that somebody eventually may get out. But for the system to work, we all have to communicate, work together, and make sure that every component in it communicates, respects their role in it, and then also focus on one outcome. So my concept of justice has always been restorative, meaning that you get punished, you get corrected, and hopefully you get out, you don't reoffend, because that concept also includes the fact that respect for victims so we don't create more. And I think as a legislative body, that's what we continue to work towards. So please continue coming. Please continue to be involved. Contact us if you have issues, because we do also respond. As Senator Chambliss mentioned to you earlier, he's personally heard stories and worked on resolving things. I know Senator Roberts has. I know Representative Hill has. I know I have. So please continue to come to the meetings. Please continue to be involved, and please continue to let us know what's going on. It does make a difference.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Hill.
Just real quick, thank you. And I appreciate y'all coming, and I appreciate your input. However, the criticisms and the critiques that I have heard primarily center on policy, procedure of DOC or pardons and parole. I want you to understand that you're talking to a group of legislators up here. Pardons and parole and Department of Correction is not a function of the legislative branch of government. It is a function of the executive branch of government. So while I agree with Representative England, we have certainly introduced some policies or some procedures that we believe would be helpful. Ultimately, these Department of Corrections and pardons and paroles are under the branch of government that's the executive branch of government. There's a limit to what the legislature can do with that. That's all. Senator, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. One thing I would like to go back, I was a little bit rusty to begin with, and Dr. Click, I may not have given enough time for anybody to ask you a question. I didn't see one, but and part of your testimony was about the 10-year set aside versus the 5-year, I think. So I would like to talk with you more about that, because and not necessarily here, but now. But I did want to just go back and if there are questions at this time, we could have those.
Any questions?
Senator Roberts.
Give us a quick overview of what it is you're doing and whom you're doing it with. That would be helpful for me.
My husband's in prison.
Mm-hmm.
He's serving a life sentence. And one of my concerns with SB 324 and the proposal was to change the possible parole set-off from 5 years to 10 years, but only for people serving life. And one of the problems with that is that the difference between serving 150 years and life in Alabama is practically arbitrary. It's based on the judge that had the case, the county you were in, and the decade you were sentenced in. For decades, parole was expected, and so judges handed out life sentences believing that those people were going to serve 25 and 30 years. Now, if you look at the recent sentencing in the past 10, 20 years, those people are getting 25 and 30-year sentences. But people before that were just given life all the time. And so I went through, like, just recent hearings. There was a man in June, he's serving 1,082 years for 19 super violent, scary, dangerous offenses. And based on the language in the bill and the proposal to change that set-off period from 5 to 10 years, he would, at the maximum, have to wait 5 years for his next parole review, but someone with life could have to wait 10. And just like I pointed out, the parole board currently sets off lots of people the maximum every chance they can. There were 21 people working unsupervised in our communities who voluntarily returned to prison every night just a month ago that were denied parole, and all were set off the maximum. And so my concern would be to make kind of an arbitrary distinction between, well, we're going to give them the chance to set off people with a life sentence 10 years when that doesn't match the people that are serving prison time. I mean, I've got a list of 10 people just in the past month or so who are all serving more than 100 years. We all know that that's a life sentence, but that's not what the bill said.
Thank you. And that was my bill, and I'd be interested to talk some more offline. It could, because the differences in sentencing over time, laws change, I could see where that's an issue. My thought there was, if we know that we're not going to parole an individual because of what's happened and what's happening, why put the victim and the victim's family through that every 5 years unnecessarily? There may be some exception or differences that I wasn't aware of, so I'd be happy to talk with you about that further. So,
Would love to have that conversation.
all right. Thank you. Representative England.
And also, have you had a chance to look at the proposed parole guidelines?
I have.
All right. We don't have to have that conversation here, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are and your criticisms, proposals, and any other suggestions that you may have.
I would be happy to forward my comments that I submitted to the parole board. The one thing I would mention, which I agree with Vocal on, is the 12 months. They're only considered disciplinaries for 12 months. That's nuts. There are people that, a year and a half ago stabbed a correctional officer, and now they get the same score as someone who has a 30-year clear record. So I think there are some improvement and possibilities there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.